This will be a quick look at the new Kia Niro, an attempt to bridge the gap between a hatchback and a CUV, and it's now becoming the anti-hybrid, even though it's a hybrid still. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, before you get bent out of shape, I say this about plenty of models. That is, their ownership base can create stereotypes for them. It doesn't matter what company it is. In the case of hybrids, well, we've all been privy to seeing Priuses on the highway in the left-hand lane that are just totally oblivious to faster moving traffic. They don't move over, or they drive more slowly. And I think hybrid vehicles have now started to have this stereotype of being slow and stodgy. Now, certain manufacturers have tried to inject some sport into them, and it really hasn't worked. But for the most part, nobody's been able to challenge that formula, and that is what Kia is trying to do. Make a normal, kind of interesting looking car without going off the deep end, not being too boring, with a focus on driving dynamics versus just straight up, a putter type commuter car. Now, there's some really great elements about the Niro in general, and that is a lot of people don't want an SUV or a bigger CUV. And you take a look at like the CX-5 or the CR-V, the RAV4, those have gotten extremely big. And even myself, when I'm driving, and I'm like, man, I just can't justify, as nice as it is, just commuting by myself. And this kind of bridges that gap. This is kind of one step below that. But the thing is, there's not a lot of trade-offs in terms of usability for most people. You open this up, it doesn't have a powered liftgate. This liftgate is obscenely light. I mean, it is ridiculous. I mean, I could just throw this thing around. It closes and opens easily without having all the electric motors and all that. It's a nice feature. The opening in terms of width and load floor are not compromised because of a battery pack, despite this being a hybrid. It really has as much cargo capacity as anything else, and it's much bigger than most hatchbacks. The other thing that is extremely cool about the Niro is the way that you get in and out. The doors open, I mean, they open extremely wide. So getting in and out is a non-issue. Getting in, it's super comfortable. Again, this is one of those cars where if you covered up the hybrid badge, you would never even know that that's what it is. Now let's take a look at the inside and see what Kia's done with the Niro. Now, you might be worried when I said this is below the Sportage that it might be kind of a cheap interior space, and it's not. Now, granted, this is the premium trim level, so there's more fluff. But the thing is, one of the reasons why the Kia Optima is one of my favorite midsize cars is this. They finally really got the interiors nailed down. In terms of quality, diversity of materials, everything feels well put together. The input points are good. All the controls are intuitive for the most part. I mean, like most modern cars, you're flooded with too many buttons on the steering wheel. It takes time to adjust to things on the interior cabin. But the things that you want to use every day, that you're going to use every day, like the volume knobs, the menu buttons are all physical. You don't have to use the touchscreen for anything. The HVAC controls are just classically laid out, simple to use. The only problem with that is they don't show you the temperature on the HVAC controls. It relies on the head unit or the touchscreen to show you what the temperature is. So if you have a failure with the touchscreen eventually, you won't know what your temperature is, and that's really annoying. It's something they gotta fix. But other than that, you're really gonna appreciate this interior space. It's very well done. Let me close the door and trap all the mosquitoes in here with me. When I said that Kia's trying to make the anti-hybrid, well, it's kind of weird because they have the eco-hybrid badges, the gauge cluster says it, but at the same time, there's no weirdness in here for the most part. I just got done with the Prius Prime plug-in hybrid, and you just look at the interior and you're like, oh my God, you know exactly who they're marketing it towards. This is for people that may not want all that weirdness, that just want good fuel efficiency, a normal, good handling vehicle, and just basically a normal vehicle operation with good fuel efficiency. And that is what this entire interior cabin just represents, normalcy. I am under the Kia Niro. This is a brand new architecture for Kia and Hyundai. This was specifically designed to be a hybrid platform and an EV platform, and to be affordable. So let's take a look at some of the things they did here. Now, Scott constantly talks about modern cars, how there's really nothing to see under here, and they all look the same. Well, there are definitely nuances of every manufacturer. In the case of Kia, You look at their vehicles as a whole, this generation has definitely covered up the underbody as much as possible with these composite or asphalt panels, and they have dual purposes. One, it reduces road noise because it deflects or absorbs it so you don't hear it in the cabin. The second thing it does is it smooths out airflow. Little things like these wheel spats, this lip on the front. It helps to move air around certain parts that create drag and flow it to the back of the car. The goal here is not for performance, but for better fuel efficiency and reduce road noise. Now, Kia said that they did something on this architecture to reduce weight. There's more use of aluminum in terms of body panels, control arms, and you see that in the front. Now, in the hub and the upright portion, before you get to the strut, it's all aluminum, and the strut is still steel. But, you know, there's more use of lightweight materials in this car than in the past. Now, as we come to the back of the Niro, there's some things you probably should know whether you're shopping for this car or you just want to learn about it. As I said, this is a new architecture dedicated to hybrids, EVs, and plug-in hybrids. So when you look at the center section, the trans and exhaust tunnel, there's no room for a drive shaft here. So that means they've designed this around fitting gas tank, which is here, and for the hybrids, the battery pack is above this on the upper side of this frame on the interior space. And the battery pack is about this thick, about this tall, and about this wide, stuffed under here. So it's super compact, and they designed it that way on purpose for packaging. The other thing that they wanted to do here purposely is make sure they fit all this and had independent rear suspension, which is something that was missing on cars like the Veloster and the Kia Soul, and they ride not good compared to this. So this was a design focus, making sure that this car rode and handled good. And, you know, honestly, let's face it, I don't want to stroke them too much because this should honestly be in every car at this point. We had this stuff in the early 90s, and now, of course, it's coming back and it's a big deal. So they have added it back here. It's really nice to see because it does make a difference. Now, this is the fuel tank. When you start to get into the EV versions, this disappears and you put a larger battery pack that will fit in here. So it's all modular. That's the point. That's the point of doing a specific architecture for a specific purpose. You can move things around, change it to fit different models. That's what they did. So you have an aluminum hub, again, to save weight. And you also have, you know this is a hybrid because all your high voltage lines for the battery pack run under this panel. And aside from that, you wouldn't know it's a hybrid if you didn't see the orange thing there, because it really does look like a regular, typical internal combustion engine car only. So they've done a nice job kind of integrating it both. Last but not least, you have a manual parking brake that's cable actuated. No electronic parking brake here, which I really like. I'm a big fan of that. But let's take a look under the hood. Now that I'm under the hood of the Kia Niro, this 1.6 liter has been changed yet again for a different application. And when we talk about the modern world of cars, this is proof positive how modular things have become. They use this same 1.6 liter in eco platforms, more normal car platforms, and now they've repurposed it to be kind of the hybrid power plant. So you can see the changes from the regular 1.6 liter. They've had to redesign the intake manifold, the intake structure in general, because typically the intake would be over there. Now they've had to shoehorn in the electric motor, the electric cooling system, the drivetrain for the hybrid system, including the 6-speed dual clutch transmission. You can see the water pump design has changed because it needs to help cool the hybrid system as well. It's just interesting to see all this. There's complication here, of course, because you're dealing with kind of two different drivetrains, and that's one of my big knocks on hybrid technology. And it's gotten so much better, but you still, you know, to have that extra fuel efficiency, it's not like you're just making the engine more fuel efficient. Now you're adding the complexity of the batteries, the hybrid drivetrain, the cooling system to the exhaust now for emissions. I mean, this stuff is definitely going to be more expensive to fix in the long run. Hopefully you don't have any issues with it, but it's something to note. That extra fuel efficiency you're getting, it's not some magic formula. It's all of this combined and the added cost and expense of all this to make that work. Let's take this thing for a drive and see how it performs. Getting behind the wheel of the Kia Niro, it was a bit of a surprise, and I think most people that have experienced hybrid driving, or if you've ever driven a car with a CVT, there's this kind of smoothness about it, yet boringness if you enjoy driving more. And I think that was the biggest shock, because the Niro uses a 6-speed dual clutch automatic transmission, which has traditional gear changes. Now, you might think, well, that's probably not as efficient. And I was a little bit surprised over driving this car that I was able to get high 40 miles per gallon, really pounding it around. I was at about 46, 47 miles per gallon the whole time. It never went lower than that. And, you know, the Kia and Hyundai 6-speed dual clutches are not the fastest thing in the world. They're more designed for efficiency. So you're not going to pop off shifts. It's not going to like be lightning fast like that. But in this case, it works, at least as a new vehicle. I don't know how it's going to hold up over time. The programming seemed pretty good. Getting off the line was good. And the overall driving experience was very non-hybrid-like. And that's what I said right at the start. They're trying to make a car that doesn't seem to be a hybrid at all. And the average person getting behind the wheel is never going to notice it. The second big thing to note about this car is it drives somewhere between like a CX-3 and a CX-5. And I feel like those are kind of the two best crossovers in terms of driving and handling dynamics. The steering is not quite as good in the Niro, but the overall handling, firmness, solidity, and lack of body roll is really good for kind of a CUV. And you can tell Kia always tunes their suspensions a little bit more on the firm side. So if you're looking for something that's a couch-like ride, the Niro may kind of be a little bit too firm for you, but I'll take the sporty driving part of this vehicle over something that would be a total snoozer. And that is kind of the final thoughts of driving this. Is it's a big surprise that they were able to kind of to make a hybrid that doesn't feel like a hybrid. Now, in terms of the negative part about this car is, well, it's front-wheel drive only. If you're looking for a CUV, you're almost like, what's the point of getting a CUV without all-wheel drive? So that might be a problem for some people. The other part is it's a little bit smaller, and I think people are obsessed with size in this segment. It's a pro and a con. I like the size of it. It feels more fitted around you. But you know, you almost like, why not just get a hatchback? Why do you need this kind of small CUV and then you don't get all-wheel drive? It's strange. Then the last part is, how is the hybrid part of this drivetrain going to hold up? You're getting great fuel economy, but you know, you still have the battery pack to worry about. If it's something you're going to keep long term over like 10 years, you know, that's something you might address. Or if you're buying it used, it's something to think about here. I was impressed with the car. I like the interior overall. It's an interesting entry into the CUV segment. I don't think anybody else is doing this like them. So it's worth putting on your list because it drives like a regular car, gets great fuel efficiency, but it's just going to be something you're going to have to decide. Would you rather take a traditional CUV or an SUV over kind of like this hybrid design? And that is kind of the last words about the Kia Niro.